I got halfway through one presentation and said, oops. And unfortunately, we didn't go backwards too. Yeah, I think of it as a basic safety check. So I'm going to want to see the rocket and go over the components, just like you were to do it in Las Cruces that day. And then maybe some questions for me, and we'll go from there. These have
Awesome.
been taking a half hour to an hour, depending on questions and so on and so forth. So
Perfect.
it's I'll turn it over to you in the beginning, and then we'll come back.
Yeah. So, hello, I'm Alex. I rec lead this year. I have James sitting next to me. He is the recovery lead. In the room we have Aaron, Lewis, and Yev, who's our avionics lead. And on the call, Grace is our director of operations, and Jake is our design lead. We'll have an analysis lead joining us as well in a little bit. But Kong is this year's rocket, King of the Skies. We're competing in the 10,000 foot COTS category, as you probably know. The airframe is mostly fiberglass with carbon fiber fins and an onyx bow tail, which is carbon infused nylon. All of the machine parts inside of Kong are aluminum, with the exception of the bulkhead and the nose cone, which is steel just for weight. We needed some weight up top. Our payload is a deployable air brake system. The air brakes are off of it for testing right now, but it's a deployable air brake system, so it'll deploy at apogee and come down on a reefed parachute to 1,500 feet, and then the reefing there will be a line cutter that'll cut the reefing and expand at that point. What else? We have a ride-along ESRA flight computer as well. And yeah, our drogue this year is a 150-foot streamer, and then our main 100-foot streamer, and our main is a 12-foot parachute.
Okay. I noticed in your report that you were going to do a flight test.
Yes, so we have spent the last couple of weeks scheduling and rescheduling a flight test because it has rained every single weekend for the past 5 weekends. So unfortunately, we weren't able to squeeze in a flight test, which is really unfortunate because we had the motor and everything and we were ready to go, but weather just didn't pan out for us.
Okay. Being on the East Coast, I totally understand that. Yeah. Okay, I guess probably what I'm going to need is, number one, can you just pick up a camera and just show me the rocket? And it's right behind you, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay.
We have our nose tip protector on there right now.
That's fine. That's fine. I guess what I need let me back up. Okay. I don't know if you've seen the latest release of the DTAG, but we no longer require 2 tender descenders in series. Okay.
Is it okay if we still do it, or are you
yes.
like recommending that we don't? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a late revision, and I'm not asking anybody to change it. You've been working on this for 6 months or more, and there's no reason to at this stage of the game. Next year, you'll know that you only need 1 tender descender. The key to it will be 2 independent matches coming from 2 independent electronic devices, deployment devices. So I just wanted to mention that.
Awesome.
Okay. As you noted, I was okay with everything except for the payload, and that is the deployment of. And you're okay at 10K as we've gone back and look at things. But I'm still a little bit in my mind. I would like somebody to sit down and just basically describe from apogee forward exactly how this is going to work, what you've done to minimize tangles, what happens if something doesn't deploy, and go into that kind of, because that's kind of when you go to Las Cruces, that's the kind of questions they're going to be asking. So
Okay, with that, I'll hand it over to Grace. She's our payload lead this year, as well as our director of operations, so she can take over.
Sweet. Hi, Ben. I hope everyone can hear me all right. Good. Sweet. So Alex, could you actually share the FDR slides? It's a little easier to walk through what's happening with a visual.
Yep.
Fantastic.
We just find the payload section.
Or you could just kind of start from the beginning. Yeah.
Cool.
So as Alex mentioned earlier, our payload is deployable, so it'll deploy at apogee and basically fall really fast until 1,500 feet. And then our reefed parachute will reefed.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the recovery slides.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, so we go up with the rocket to 10K, and then there's our main deployment event. The payload is stuffed in a sabot, which has 4 leaves, which shock cord runs through. And when the rocket separates, the shock cord goes under tension, and all of the leaves just kind of unravel and eject the payload from the rocket. After that, we'll be falling under a reefed 4-foot chute.
Can I stop you there?
Sorry?
Can we go back to the sabot and explain to me how that's not going to tangle?
So we have the lines are all put together by the recovery team. Are you concerned about it tangling during separation, or
All the above?
okay, so basically this sabot has shock cord from the streamer to and James, feel free to hop in and correct me where I'm messing up here. It runs right through this 3D printed piece, and they're all in a bunch of little pieces. And when it opens, when the shock cord gets tight, all those pieces break away and they just fall away, and the payload comes apart. To prevent the cord tangling during deployment, I would have to send that over to James, but that's like fundamentally how the sabot works. The deployment bag on the payload, if you're concerned about that getting tangled, we have them pretty far separated on the shock cord, I believe. But I'm going to hand it over to James to talk for a second.
Okay.
Yep. So in terms of like the main body of the payload itself, actually one of the design choices we made for the rocket this year was to switch from a drogue parachute to a drogue streamer, which goes from, maybe it's like a 4-foot, you got your 4-foot diameter, you have that much surface area that's potential for the payload to get caught on. With a streamer, like even if there is an impact, even if they do collide, there's a very little chance of them actually getting tangled up, since they'll just kind of bounce off. So in terms of, we moved to a drogue streamer to sort of minimize the amount of surface area that the payload could get sort of caught in. Even if it does hit, there's less of a risk of things, with losing our drogue essentially. In terms of minimizing the tangling of like the payload, the parachute on the payload, the parachute is actually bagged until it is sufficiently clear away from the recovery system to deploy. And the way we accomplish that is, like Grace said, with a deployment bag, which is attached to our main recovery harness, which means that the parachute won't actually be exposed until the payload itself is far enough away that tangling is almost a non-issue.
Okay, so the streamer, attached to the streamer recovery harness, will be the sabot, which at some point in time will have your payload in it. And in addition, you've also got a deployment bag.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, that helps. Have you actually ground tested this?
You mean like releasing the payload from the sabot?
Well, what I'm saying is no, have you ground tested? In other words, have you buttoned everything up and set this off on the grounds to see how everything pops out?
Yes. Yep. We have a video of a successful ground test.
Okay. Do you have video of that by chance?
We do. I don't have it on my laptop, but if you're interested, I can email it to you.
That would be great. I'd like to see that.
And in that deployment test, the Sabo did slide out just fine. It was secured together just so the payload wouldn't get damaged during the deployment testing. But it does slide out super easy. And we're planning on testing a lot with the Sabo just falling apart if we just pull on the shock cord a little bit. So
Okay. Okay.
I will note that we used the same Sabo design last year and had successful deployment of our payload.
Okay, good, good. There was only, yeah, I was there last year, but there was only, what, 100 flights, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, yeah, okay, that's good information too, and be sure and mention that when you go through safety at Las Cruces. Okay, I feel a little more comfortable. Can you explain to me, both either recovery or payload and both? You've got this main parachute in a deployment bag. You're using your tender descenders to basically open the bag up and deploy the parachute, which means there must be electric wires running all over the place in order to do that. So can you explain to me, exactly how you got that set up and how you're going to prevent the wires from either disconnecting, getting tangled, all that sort of stuff?
Yep. So, well, one of our major design decisions for the recovery system this year was to solve that exact issue. We didn't want wires running across the entirety of our recovery system, which could get pulled, tangled, what have you. So what we did is both our tender descenders are as close to the avionics side bulkhead as possible. And what this enables us to do is basically like it minimizes the amount of length that we need to run those wires for. So basically there's only just enough to give it the slack so that as things are like, jumbling around while our rocket's in free fall, it won't pull out, but there's not enough slack that really could get tangled on anything. So you see the two tender descender twos on the left side of this line diagram. You see the only thing between the bulkhead that leads to the avionics bay and them is a single eye bolt.
Okay, so does that mean that when you deploy at Apogee, when you deploy your payload, that the main bag is not flapping around out in the air?
Yes. Yep. So it will be contained within our payload bay essentially. And then once you see the longer length there, so essentially this is actually an older diagram, but once we release the tender descenders, our recovery system actually lengthens and our main parachute bag is tied to where it does not lengthen. So what happens is simultaneously the parachute bag is pulled off our parachute and the parachute is pulled out such that it will be in open air and able to inflate properly.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Can we go back to the payload? And I noticed that, I think it was in your report too, that you said you were not going to use the wheel.
Oh, the reaction wheel?
The reaction wheel.
Yeah, so that was a decision kind of made by our team with the feedback we got from you guys. So since we have not tested it, the reaction wheel system in flight yet, we figured it wasn't best to have the first test be in our IRAC rocket. So instead, the lead on that, John, is working on an L1 level reaction wheel, which is going to fly, I believe, in 2 weeks. And then we plan to incorporate that and scale it up into next year's rocket instead.
Okay. All right. I'm kind of curious. I like the, I know what you're trying to do, and you're trying to basically get data on how your air brakes would work. Are you concerned about the payload swinging back and forth and, doing all are you concerned about the forces that the reaction wheel would negate out, basically, to give you good data?
For payload wise, no. Because the payload, we're really only going to be recording data as the payload is falling outside of the rocket. So that's where the majority of our data is going to be collected for the payload.
Okay, yeah, I understand, but after it gets kicked out of the rocket, it's gonna be swinging around and you know, it's not gonna come straight down, which the reaction wheel would basically counter react and straighten you up and bring you down straight. You're gonna be swinging around. If you've ever watched any kind of deployments that happen with these systems, you know, you're really, it's pretty rough up there.
Yeah, so the swinging, just to clarify, the reaction wheel was always going to be in the rocket,
Oh,
not the payload.
oh,
So the payload, we had this discussion early on about concerns about tumbling and how it affects the payload performance. We kind of determined that the amount of noise that we would get from tumbling on our air brakes wouldn't affect it overly.
okay.
It wouldn't be a huge deal, mainly because we have two load cells connected directly to the bottom of our air brake. So it's, even if it's falling like this, it will still be recording any load that's on it, even if the load is minimal.
Okay. My question was more, have you addressed it then? You know, and you have, so that's great. On that end of it. Who sized the streamer? For
Sorry,
the-
what was that?
Is it a commercial streamer done by
Oh, yep.
Rocket Man, or is it a
It's a Rocket Man Extremes 10-inch by 100-foot.
okay? And the 100-foot was determined by him, by Rocket Man, or something
Yep,
you ordered and
so-
said I need 100 feet, or what?
Yep, so Rocket Man publishes data that's like for a given weight, how slow their streamer will actually descend. And we
Okay.
use that data to select a streamer that'll fit for our rocket.
Cool. Okay. Let me think. I did look at your fin attachments. If you got a couple of drawings on that for me, real quick.
Yep. Do this one.
Yep, that's the one that's in the documentation. I thought you did a real good job on it.
Oh, thank
Um,
you. That was
yeah,
designed by our lead machinist. So
Cool. I think that's going to work out really well. I'm running. Yeah, you know what? This looks like a really neat project. What else do I have? Standard COTS motor. And I know Curtis really well.
They did a really good job last year too.
thank you.
Curtis and I go back a long ways. Okay. You know what, gang? I'm impressed. I think you've done a really good job. I think you're taking the right approach by just testing your air brakes out and getting data and then coming back and perhaps integrating it into the rocket. I just give you a heads up, next year, be very careful that you document everything that deals with the air brakes and the reaction wheel and all that sort of stuff, because reaction wheels, as they're supposed to do, have an impact on the flight. So we kind of home in on that end of it. So I honestly don't have anything else I can really think of. So I'll flip it back. If it's at all possible and you do get a test flight off, could you send me an email
Yeah.
indicating that, indicating the success of the flight?
Yeah, of course. I really don't think it's gonna happen since everyone's kind of wrapping up and going
Yeah.
to co-op, but it's really unfortunate that it rained. We were ready too. And it just
That's obvious. Yeah, I mean, I can see that from the rocket being there and the fact that you were willing to fly it. That tells me that you're well along the path and on that end of it. So I'll reverse it and ask the team if they have any questions for me.
Okay. I just a clarification thing. So we're still doing the safety reviews at the poster sessions.
Yes, you
Okay.
do not change your configuration. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what would the change that we did make.
Okay,
That was all. At this stage of the game, I would not even suggest that you change that out. Especially since you've done some ground testing and you've tested it out, so you're comfortable with it. No,
okay,
that's
and then I have one other
that's the
question.
last engineering change that could well wind up not working the way you thought it was going to work. So just be aware of it for next year.
Perfect.
If you're going to do the same kind of stuff.
And then one other question, our velocity off rod is sitting around just under 90 feet per second right now. Is that
Mhm.
okay? Do we have to
Yes.
do anything to show that it's gonna get off the rod?
No, you're fine.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, we're just trying to, that 90 to 100 feet per second comes when the winds are cranking in the 15 to 20 mile an hour range.
Okay.
So if it gets above 20, we'll be shutting down anyway. So it's
Perfect.
so you're close enough. I probably would not accept 50, but 90 to 100 is fine.
Perfect.
Because it's going, and in reality, it's going to depend on your final weight.
Yeah. And we always end up weighing like a pound heavier for some reason, but we've taken that into account this year.
Oh, okay, only a pound. Okay,
Does anyone else have any questions?
yeah, now's the time.
No?
Quiet. No questions about last. How many of the team members have were there last year?
So we had 24 come with us last year. I would say about half the team that's going this year went last year, if not a little bit more than that. So we got a good
Okay.
group going.
All
Do
right.
you all have AAA memberships?
Most of the team has AAA memberships. Everyone on pad and recovery has AAA, as well as a
Make
couple
sure you have downloaded and saved a picture of your card from the
Okay.
website. It's available digitally now, so you don't have to worry about losing it. Because they're going to check your cards before
Okay.
you could go out to the pads.
Yep, I'm having everyone bring their AAA memberships, their NAR memberships, as well as their school IDs, I believe we need, and a
Doesn't
NAR
matter about NAR memberships. Nobody with a NAR
No?
membership is going to be allowed out at the pad.
Oh, really? Well, out to the pad.
With only a NAR membership.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. And you don't have to have a certification. You just need to be a member of AAA to go out to the pads.
But having certifications is a really good thing.
Yeah, I would say most of our team has their L1 at least. I know James is going for his L3 at some point.
When finals have finally calmed down, yeah.
Okay. But by the way, my wife joined us. Lee was not
Yeah.
able to make it, so she snuck in on us. So, which is good. She always reminds everybody about the cards.
I do.
I don't know if you want to. We went over recovery.
Yeah, I was here for the recovery.
Yeah, I was. Oh, okay, good. Okay. Like I said, yeah, it's been a pleasure compared to
It's
some
been
others.
nice working with you. I appreciate the feedback that we get. I know a lot of teams aren't getting a lot of feedback from their reports, but you've been very good about getting us feedback quickly. So I appreciate that a lot.
Well, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and you can't always count on no news is good news.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Jake, any of you guys out there in the far world? Any questions about Las Cruces or the days? As Elaine mentioned, Tripoli, joining Tripoli is pretty important. It's an absolute must for going out to the pads and recovery too, by the way.
Yep.
But no, cool. Okay. Congratulations. I look forward to seeing you there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Oh,
You're welcome. You guys have everybody have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I did.
Damn.
it.
Stop recording.
How do I stop recording?